Hello there. How are you? I'm Paul. I am basically a guide for people. I consider what I do called Awakening You, or awakeningyou.net is my website. I teach breath work, and I also do these transformational lives for people. So the topic today is, do you get high off of disappointment, frustration, fear, and abuse? Maybe that triggers you. I just ask you to take a deep breath. That was 3 deep breaths, but essentially, we have all been trained that things aren't going to work out and to prepare for the worst, whether we like it or not. It started in childhood. It started with as simple things as a parent loving us and trying to protect us from touching something that we might get hurt, touching the stove, touching that glass statue or whatever. You're growing up in a child and complete and pure and innocent, and you're about to touch it, and all of a sudden you get a whack on your back end. Maybe not all parents did that, but my parents did. In what other ways? Shut up. Do not talk like that. Kids should be seen but not heard. Or a parent that will basically hit your bum or slap your face or get the belt out or yardstick or whatever. These are all things that are in our parents' nervous system that were used on them to entrain them into safety and love by the parents, that have basically caused damage to us and our nervous system, our mental processes, etc., because they didn't know any better. And I'm not here to blame parents or these kind of things. This was the program that we all came here to be part of. I came here to be hurt and wounded, and no, you came here to be small and to learn to rise up. So you came in. I honestly think it's a requirement of the dark that's running the planet, and that's shading away or starting to come to light right now. But you had to have this experience to come here. You had to have some experience that was a deep trauma that was done at childhood. That could be sexual abuse. That could be your father hitting you, yelling at you, mother spanking you, narcissistic tendencies, etc. But you were given this veil. And we all talk about the veil in 3D consciousness. We basically stepped out of unity or source or being part of God. And I know people hate being called sometimes that they're God, but we're all a fractal of God. We're all a part of source consciousness. We came here in a dual experience. So there's basically a higher self us, which is up here and maybe not in your body and guiding you. Some of what we consider our guides is our higher self. I get guidance and it comes in my own voice. So if you think you're crazy and other things, no, my guidance comes from my higher self. May come from your grandmother, may come from a voice you call God. You may not hear it. You may feel things. You may know things. Thank God. The hearing is so much harder because I have to interpret things, but I know things, claircognizance. So I've lived this. I've been doing these lives for the last 15 years of my life and talking about this stuff. There's content showing up here all the time. Everything I share is from my clear knowing, my clear awareness of going through it, not something that I wrote in a book or read in a book, etc. It's all mine, and it's lived awareness. So receive that in whichever way you like. I also wear the Ankh, which is the temple of Isis, the symbol of Isis. And basically, it has no energy attached to it other than a purity of intention. And that's what we're all moving back to, is purity and innocence. So let's go back to, okay, so let's go to the very first one. So did you get negative attention from your parents by being bad and doing things that they didn't like and other stuff? So they yell at you or whatever, because maybe your parents were too unconscious. They were too busy with life. It's like job and work, and all they're talking about is all the shit that happened in their day, and they never gave you any affirmations. Hey, dear, you're doing great. I love you. Somebody mentioned it today. Instead of telling your child when the child comes up and, hey, Dad, do you like my picture or whatever? And most people would say, hey, it's beautiful. I love it or whatever. Somebody said, instead, they said, what do you think of your picture? And the kid's like, what? Somebody cares what I think? And then all of a sudden this child is given an example and it's like, oh, I love it. I think it's pretty cute. And look at the colors here and look at this and look at that. And then you can affirm them for what they did. How many times did you receive that as a child? How many times were your mom and dad just too busy going to work, going to whatever, getting the groceries, mowing the lawn, doing all this stuff? I lived it. I'm a dad of 3. I've got 3 boys. The oldest is 23 years old now. And I fucked my kids up a lot. And I'll be the first to admit it. I had a divorce when the oldest was 12. Do you think those kids are comfortable? But at the time, I had a divorce. It was a sexless marriage and a whole bunch of other stuff. And my guidance that came from, and I was just starting to get this, was that if I did not have a divorce, I would die of a heart attack within 5 months. And some people may see that as an excuse or whatever, but it just, who would ever tell somebody that? And it came from above and it came into my head and all this kind of stuff. Nobody outside me said all this stuff, but a part of me knew it was true. How many are you in conditional relationships where you have to give to the other person and they're not sending anything back? There's no balance. There's no receiving for you. You're a giver. You're hurting. You're in pain. You're in suffering. So this could be all the way back to your childhood. You'll just accept anything. And I'll warn you, my wife was my mother. Exact same thing. My mother was raped as a child. This woman was raped as a child, had the exact same wounds. We will often gravitate to a partner that has the same wounds as our parents because we still haven't cleaned up with the parents. We haven't made clarity in any of this. So I was running around accepting the craziest shit. Like I would tell her, I don't like squash in my meals or whatever. And I'd go and work all day, bring all the money home to do it. And she would put squash in my food. It was just like poke, 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 torment, torment, torment. When we'd be intimate with each other or whatever, she'd giggle. Oh, you're tickling me in the middle of it to basically distract me and shut me off and the experience. And then to avoid it, she'd say how fat I was and how it didn't feel good. And I'd even offer to lose weight if there was an incentive, and that scared her even more. It was like, nah, oh, I would never do that. I'd gladly have starved myself to death to be intimate with my wife. But I'll tell you right now, marriage doesn't guarantee these things. So I basically perverted myself to receive love, which I thought was physical pleasure, sexuality, etc. And basically I fell on my face. And basically I was giving so much to my wife, and many of us, husband or wife, this story I've seen on both sides of the fence, will be stuck in this pleasing, pleading, helping, giving as much as you can. It was to the point near the end of my marriage where I'd say, hey, honey, would you like to play some cards after supper or whatever? And it's like, no, I'm tired. And she'd go to her room, lay in our bed and watch TV, whatever she wanted. So to let her have that, I'd lay on the couch downstairs until 9, 10 o'clock at night until I was ready to go to bed. And then I'd go up. She'd often be asleep already because she knew what time I would come or whatever. And I'd crawl into bed with my roommate. So I was hurting and not getting the love, and she was hurting and not getting the love, but we had no way of communicating. We had no way of directness, etc. So there's an example. What are other examples? You go to a boss that you hate and you basically please him all day long just to survive because you need that money, and you'll take whatever shit he gives, and he's just a wounded little boy inside himself. So what are other examples of that? You get rejected all the time when you're dating. You get your mother or somebody that triggers the frick out of you all the time in all your relationship. Eventually you get to the point that it's like the world's against me. And I've succumbed to this. Basically, I'm going to use a term called sadomasochist, which is the concept of joining sadism and masochism. So masochism is basically self-hatred or hurting yourself to feel good. Sado is sadism to the point of blood, pain, suffering, etc. So we get into this point where we get into this state. There's a beautiful book by Carolyn Elliott called Existential Kink. And some of the stuff I learned there, some of it I put together on pieces, but I learned I was a sadomasochist inside. I got off on feeling bad, feeling sad, being frustrated, and I was always in that state. And guess what? That vibration of me being frustrated and not things working out and things falling apart and blah, 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 blah is all I created in my reality. I just kept getting more and more of it. My business failed, this failed, that failed, CV happened, relationships failed. And then even the relationships I thought that were mine and were good, I later found out this woman that I went back to 6 times. First time she accused me of rape when it didn't even happen. I gave her a healing session, fully clothed. And when I refused to have sex with her afterwards, she went to my community and basically said, I'm not even sure it was her idea, but that I raped people. And I had not. I would not. That's not in my integrity in any way, shape, or form. And then I went back to this woman because I wanted to please her and I wanted to prove her wrong and all this kind of stuff. We got to the end of our relationship after she basically trashed me 6 times. Like, what kind of loser does that to himself? And basically, I got her to apologize for what she'd done and admit it in public. She put it to only viewable by me, but claimed that everybody had seen it, which was a bunch of bullshit, because she didn't want to admit it. She was too ashamed that she'd gone to that level. And I'm not even sure. She claimed that she was divorced so she could get back into my life, and then she became my girlfriend. I'm not even sure. I went to her house several times at great like, why are we always coming to my place? Why are we not ever going to your place? Went to her place, I think, twice. And I'm not even sure she was divorced, because her husband came after me about 2 years ago, and she phoned me up and she says, do not answer the phone now, or whatever. And her husband was basically phoning me and wanting to know who the frick I was and who I was to his wife. That's not something a divorced man does. So I did these things to myself. My dad hit me when I was young for not eating my vegetables and screamed and yelled at me and made me cry at the table for hours and hours on end. I got off on that level of attention. So now I'm 54 years old, and I found I was still getting off on that level of negative attention. Narcissistic mother, narcissistic father, all my relationships being the same. And it's like, this is all I'm worthy of. Bullshit, I found out. Why would you do that to yourself? Guess what? When you've hit a real bottom and that pain is about all you can take, you get addicted to it. It's like, oh, and you're just sitting on that edge. Your nervous system is completely contracted, expecting the next one, and then seeing every relationship that shows up, every possibility that shows up through this lens of how's she going to hurt me and how's she going to do this stuff and how's she going to be like my mother. And it basically got to the point that I was addicted to failure, because all I could see, every person that would come into my life was my mother, was that pain, was that suffering. But I knew I could take it as long as I protect myself before. So I closed my heart off, and I started to believe that was all I was capable of. But as I've learned to love myself, this is the way out, is loving yourself, starting to recognize these facts. What are these things that keep showing up in my life? Is it a pattern? Is it happening all the time? I went through 10 girlfriends since my divorce 12 years ago. And some of them were great. I attracted in some of the greatest, most loving connection with other people. But at the end, I realized that it was as long as I was a dad to their kids, because that's their wound, and they needed a dad for their kids or whatever, but it was undisclosed. And when she came up and kind of breasted her son up to talk to me, and the son says, hey, is it okay if I call you dad? That's when our kids first met, because I've got 3 kids, she had 2. I was like, but I responded to the son. I said, hey son, I said, no, your dad's always going to be your dad, but I can be your friend. You're a super cool guy. You're confidant, whatever. And he was happy with that. She wasn't. Her face fell and she was mad and all this kind of stuff, because this undisclosed expectation, which is okay. I was learning. And eventually it was the fail of the relationship. There was a whole bunch of other physical reasons I can talk about, but it's not important here. When has that happened to you? When have you sought love, sexuality, fun, play, whatever, from somebody that's not in the light? The first time I shared sexuality with this woman, I'd barely known her like 2 weeks, but she came to my house, and the next thing I know, she was asking what's my safe word, and we were in bed for 3 days, which was powerful and moving. But within the first hour, she's like, I'm selling everything and I'm moving down here. She lived 3 hours away. That terrified me, because there was no level of intimacy, there was no connection, there was no agreements, there was no rules, and I could just see myself getting smashed and hurt over and over and over again, because she was looking for a father for the kids, somebody to blame, etc. And then when we talk about my stuff, she'd always talk about my stuff, never her stuff, which kind of led to pain and suffering. So how's this replaying in your life? I'm not trying to share and tell you all my story. I'm trying to tell you that I've been through this. It may reflect into you and you have similar. And all I'm saying is recognition is key. Awareness is key. The fact of awakening is, I'm sleeping and I'm doing exactly what the program tells me to do. And what has always happened is going to continue to happen, which is not true. You're a conscious creator. Awakening is, the blankets are off, the veil is pulling back. What have I been doing to myself? And once you can consciously say, what have I been doing to myself? Things change. Everything's different at that point. You have curiosity at that point. It's like, are these things that Paul just said maybe happening in my life? Yes, they are. Why is that? Why does that keep showing up? This is ugly. Poof. Boom. There's the first step of conscious awareness. The next one is making a choice. So if you're loving somebody and they're hurting you, or you're getting abused by them, or like, for example, women that live with an abusive husband that hits them and gets angry and all that kind of stuff, he's living in his triggers. This may be your father, this may be your mother replaying. It can be vice versa in the genders. Do you deserve that? Are you safe in expecting that? Because you could not possibly expect a man that loves you and does not hit you, because that's all you've known. It's as simple as that. And this is going to be the hardest thing you're ever going to believe. Is, my friend Roxanne tells me, recognize what is, thank it for being and the lessons that it taught you, and then say, I deserve better and I choose better. And basically put your hands on your heart and start loving yourself. I'm having to do this consciously every day. There's stuff that I can't stand and triggers, and it's all coming to the light, and I'm just like, I'm getting beat to death. What the hell's going on here? Why is this so hard? But as I surrender those old programs, those old stories, those old beliefs, those old things, that's all I deserve is suffering, and fill it with love, with my hands, imagine just shining bright God source light shining in. And if you don't know what that feels, feel it in me right in this moment. It's going into my heart, into my body, breaking up. There's a whole bunch of stuff in behind my heart. There's a bunch of stuff in my right hip and my pelvis. And I'm filling myself with that. All those stories no longer serve. We're jumping onto new timelines, new possibilities, new variants of self-love. And until you self-love yourself, you're not going to see any of this stuff. Once you make the choice to self-love, you will lose weight. Your reality will start to change. People will be seeing you different. They'll be looking across the room and it's like, who the hell is that? Because they see a light shining out of you. Self-love is your light. Your light has been inverted. It's been given to entities and your parents and all these kind of things. I pulled this big, giant black cord out from the middle of my back. That's where it hurt the most. And it was the the stuff in my parents that hasn't been healed through many generations. I call it a lineage entity. You can call it whatever you want. Grandma's not healed and she was really angry. And basically they're living on by sucking the energy off of their kids and their kids' kids and their kids' kids. This is what we call epigenetics and lineage trauma. So basically by saying my lineage trauma no longer serves me. In shamanism, we talk about lineage trauma is basically healed. We are born to be the medicine, they call it. So we're here for 10 generations forward, 7 generations back of healing the lineage trauma. So we're going to clean up 7 generations back. And can you imagine all the stuff that's attached and the stories that are in the family? And I see it all the time where patterns like a member of the family, the woman of the family are always raped because their mother was raped and their grandmother was raped and their great grandmother was raped, and this stuff will propagate and it becomes this pattern that lives out through the lineage, through your DNA. Without your conscious awareness, you'll draw it in and you don't even know it's going to happen, and then it's your worst wound. Well, guess what? You're all curled up like this, your back is wide open and exposed, and then they feed off your heart and your fear. So that getting high off of negative outcomes doesn't even feed ourselves. We get high on it and then it's like, oh, I can't even make a decision. It's like we fawn during sexuality and we're a no, but fawning means you basically freeze because you don't know what to do. And then afterwards you get off on it. It's like, oh, I feel bad and I'm scared and why did this happen to me? And every time you're in a victim, you're basically in a state of giving your power away. But you don't even know who you're giving your power to away to. It may not be just the perpetrator. It may be that lineage trauma, that wound that's sucking off you, and it doesn't know any better. It's just the only thing that it's conscious of is getting energy, and it's doing anything possible. It'll insert thoughts into your head because that cord is connected to your nervous system, your brain, all these things. So if your negative outcomes are coming over and over and over and over again, you probably have a lineage entity. If that's scary for you and you don't want to deal with it, you're welcome to come talk to me and I can help walk people through that. I can consciously see it, etc. But just the simple choice of my lineage entity no longer serves me. I end all contracts here and now is enough to end it. Try it. Say it out loud to yourself. Put your hands on your heart. If you want to open a window just so the entity can leave, maybe light a little candle, put some incense, or wave some Palo Santo around. That's simple. And they may be angry. They may be frustrated. They may be scared, most likely scared. So if it feels uncomfortable, know that you cannot be touched unless you believe that they can touch you or they can harm you. Because the minute you sever that contract, all the things that are going on, and then basically severing the contract, and then I take a silver sword or an axe or whatever, and I basically cut the cord and send light to both ends of it. Because that was not in light, that was in shadow, that was a bunch of pain that's been propagated forever, and basically send it all to the light. They may not like it. It's not their choice, because once you end your contract with that, it's done. So, and then you're going to go through a journey. It's going to be an integration period. It's going to be like, oh, I don't feel bad about myself anymore. I don't bring up these bad circumstances and all this kind of stuff. Then watch more of my videos, because the truth is in all my videos on my YouTube page, New Perspectives on Reality. Basically, I talk you through everything that shows up in your journey. And you're going to start realizing that a lot of what we've been told is a lie. And then you're going to be able to consciously empower yourself and start making change. It's beautiful. It's loving. It's graceful. But to say it's comfortable is not easy, but we're all being pushed to go through it right now. So ask yourself the question, do I get off on negative outcomes? And most of us, that's going to be true. And it's going to be like a huge pain and suffering. If you want to learn more about it, you can read that book, Existential Kink. I'll do more videos on the shadow of existing that has been this human experience going forward over the next weeks. There's lots in my content. Just go look at it. There's a playlist called Powerful Truth. Go read those. There's another one, a podcast called Awakening You. That's a YouTube podcast. Go look at them. I only put stuff in there that's going to transform you, to shift you. And I'm not looking to have people pay me to get this knowledge. The knowledge is all here, freely given. But some people are going to hit the wall and they're not going to know how to deal with it, or that's going to be too uncomfortable. And then they'll see value in having somebody that's been through this work to guide them and say, hey, watch out for that. Hey, is your mother doing that? Hey, is your dad doing that? Oh, what about that? I see people selling this stuff and that they're healing people and making them high off of one-time shot fixes, which just are temporary, because we are multi-layered. We have an onion to be peeled of shit that's been programmed onto us: religion, government, parents, exes, kids, education, blah, blah, blah. We can talk forever. You're going to run into the hurdles, because the hurdles are multifaceted. There's not just one. Like, I got to deal with this. Well, why do you have no abundance in your life? Why do you not have relationships in your life? Why do you not have sexuality? You could have had a celibacy vow that you made in a past life as a priest or a priestess or whatever. You could have a vow of poverty that you took as being a nun or a priest as well. How do those things serve you anymore? But you died with them and you never ended them, and you had no way of knowing. So say that. Say, I end all contracts around celibacy. I vow all contracts around poverty. Now I end them. I wriggle them out of my certain nervous system. Move, shake, use the Palo Santo, use the candle, start moving and say, or tap yourself, or use tapping, which is like, you can do these different points on your body and tap on them and say, I no longer need these agreements. This is EFT. And then you can do the 9 gamut point, which is down on the bottom of your hand, the karate chop point, some people call it. You can use these while reciting, it no longer serves me that these things are in my body, but they're all part of you. And they're subconsciously making choices for you to get an outcome that just feeds this loop that you're in of pain and suffering and failure and struggle, because somebody up the chain is feeding off you failing. And look at the banks, look at the governments, look at all of these things. They're all in the same game. The news, etc., all makes you in a state of the world's going to end. There's going to be World War III tomorrow, and there's going to be this, and cancel, all of that. There's another tool to use. When you're saying stuff, your words are spells. So it's like, I'm not good enough. Cancel now. But I've said that many times. Or I'm not worthy. Cancel. They roll out of my mouth so easily because that was my program. Look at what your beliefs and your programs and your software. It's just like downloading a CAD package. It's like, okay, I can talk about CAD all day long and blah, 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 blah. It's in my brain, and I know that the angles and the geometry and the layers and all this kind of shit. Well, what did you download to suffer from? Relationship, pain. Know that most love in this reality is based on loving outside ourselves, which is attachment, codependence, and struggle. You're basically hoping somebody will love you so you can get evidence to say that I love me, or I should love me. There's your mistake right there. I talked about self-love. Put your hand in your heart. Just keep saying it. Get used to it. I have this little song that I sing in the car. It's like, I love me, I love me, I love me. It's like the Barney song, but it's like saying something in a happy way. The Barney song has lots of energy and positivity or whatever. Who's going to love you until you love yourself? And I will guarantee to you, the minute you love yourself, everything changes, because people will stop coming to feed off you. You'll find people that are of like vibration, and they will love themselves first. And then you can make agreements with these people. It's like, hey, is this the same thing you want? And you can be direct with them and ask questions and all this kind of stuff. And they'll do it from self-love, not from pleasing, not from attachment, codependence. How many times have you been in a relationship and you feel like you got claws in your back because your wife or husband or whatever is just loves you so much because you're a light worker, and that's why you're watching this kind of stuff? Because it makes them feel good. It keeps them avoiding looking at their own wounds. But guess what? The minute you start looking at your own wounds and start making choices, those people aren't going to resonate with you anymore. Relationships may fall away, which will be the best things that ever happen in your life. It may hurt at that moment, and it may be tugging on all your wounds and all your suffering and all this kind of stuff. But the minute you're self-loving, all the stuff that's not self-loving will start to shatter. The friendships, the jobs, the whatever. And when you self-love yourself, I'm going to give you a secret. Stuff's going to show up to support you. If you think it's like, oh, I'm going to lose my house and I don't have any money and blah, 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 blah. Once you really trust that your natural state is self-love, things are going to show up and you're going to start manifesting and creating it. If you have too much stuff going on in your head, I can't guarantee anything's it's going to feel like you're going to hit bottom first. But the only one that's going to kill you or cause you to suffer is you. Once you fully understand that, what you believe will be true, no matter what it is. So if you kind of say, I believe I'm abundant and money's going to show up and support's going to show up, crazy cool things will happen. A house to live or a room offer from a friend or something while you can make the choice. I've got a phone call coming in, so we'll call it that as a complete. Dig into this. If you got questions, put them in the comments and I'll answer anything in truth. I love you all. awakeningyou.net is my website. Come join me. I love you. Bye. Hello?
Hello?
Just one sec here. And I was just